So you will read from the Daily State Journal? I will not. It is mere propaganda. Sir, it is opinion only. I refuse to be an unpaid mouthpiece for the powers in Austin. Captain Kidd could not make himself back down. It was not a thing for which he had any aptitude, nor had he ever, and it was far too late in life to change. He said, so understand this. I read of events from places far removed, so that indeed they have a fairy tale quality about them. And if you do not care for that sort of thing, then stay home. He stood over the man at his full height, dignified in his threadbare duck coat and his disreputable traveling hat. Hello, and welcome back to the Let to Lens podcast, a safe place for folks who like the movie better than the book and vice versa. We are recording this on Wednesday, March 31st, 2021. Today we are discussing News of the World, available to rent on streaming platforms. With me to talk today about the adaptation is the Kaiwa adversary and pro-Alexander Jackson Hamilton militant, Mr. Erik. Say hello to the people, E.
Hello, people. I'm not sure how I feel about that, really. These names are just seem so fake. Alexander Jackson Hamilton.
Yeah.
And he was running against Davis.
Edmund Davis.
That's at least more of a normal name. But
yeah,
Alexander Jackson Hamilton sounds like Alexander Hamilton.
Yeah.
Just like a little Jackson thrown in.
Isn't there
President Jackson?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So they took all the presidential names and just put them in
He was the OG though.
Yeah, I guess so.
So how are you?
I'm good. It's late. We've had some audio difficulties. I'm listening to myself through headphones while we do this, which is a different experience for me.
Yeah.
So I can't tell if I'm yelling or if I'm whispering, and I just hear myself really well.
You sound really good.
That's good.
Like really good.
Good.
So
I do my best talking after 9.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is. Just like my voice has been warmed up all day, and I'm ready to
go.
Ready to talk.
But it's only for a short amount of time, though, right?
That's right. Yes.
So we got to finish quick.
Yeah.
Okay. So fast facts. The book News of the World was written by Paulette Jiles, published in 2016, and has a Goodreads rating of 4.09 of 78,000 ratings. So very well-read book. The movie, also called News of the World, was released in theaters on December 25th, Christmas Day, and on-demand streaming on January 15th of this year, and directed by Paul Greengrass, who also directed The Bourne Supremacy, The Bourne Ultimatum, and Captain Phillips. Screenplay by Paul Greengrass as well. With Paul Davies, who actually was a screenwriter for the movie Lion. Starring Tom Hanks and Helena Zengel, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 88% and Metacritic score of 73, 2 Golden Globe nominations, 0 wins for original score, supporting actress, and 4 people Academy Award nominations for production design, original score, cinematography, and sound. So
the joke's on us because in our season of Oscar bait, this did not get a nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay.
Joke is on us.
Well, that went to Borat 2, which is an adaptation of, I suppose, both Borat 1 and the character Borat as played in the Ali G show, which I don't think should count.
It should not count at all. I mean, it's sort of like a cop-out, I think.
Yeah. I know they liked the movie and that's why it got nominated, but that's not really an adaptation.
It's not adapted from anything.
And I think most of that movie actually is also improv, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of it.
I don't think there's an actual script.
No. I mean, I think they have situations that they want to get themselves in, and then they sort of just go from there.
I just don't understand how you give out a screenwriting nomination to something without a screenplay.
Well, as you're aware, the Academy Awards are all political, right? You got to take out ads.
I guess.
Can you give us a quick recap?
Yeah. News of the World, a Civil War veteran and professional newspaper reader, Jefferson Kyle Kidd, agrees to deliver a girl taken by the Kaiwa people 4 years ago to her aunt and uncle against her will. They travel hundreds of miles into South Texas and face grave dangers as they search for a place that either can call home.
Oh, man.
That's News of the World. It's interesting you mentioned the Goodreads ratings, 4.09 with 78,000 reviews. I had never heard of this book before the movie.
Yep.
And I just can't... Maybe the movie encouraged a bunch of people to read it.
Probably. I do think it was a big book club book because my mom had read it in her book club, and as well, it was a National Book Award winner, I believe, in whatever 2016 or 2017.
No. National Book Award winner?
I believe so,
Oh,
or
wow.
maybe a finalist. But I thought I read today that it was a winner, so it was at least
Okay.
yeah, at least in the conversation for that. So that's probably why it's pretty popular.
Yeah. That just strikes me as a lot.
Yeah,
And probably a lot of people were frustrated by this. Did you talk to your mom about this book at all?
yeah, she didn't like it,
Yeah.
so
I'd be interested. Yeah. 4.08 seems very high.
it seems very high. Yeah, so we'll see. We'll get into it. Before we do, we have a quick game called Two Truths, One Lie. Eric, do you know how to play?
Yes. But for those listening, you'll read 3 statements. 2 of them will be truths. 1 of them will be a lie.
Thank you for that explainer.
Or in the theme of this movie and book, 2 of them will be fake news. 1 of them will be the true real news.
Well done. Well done. So, number 1, Helena Zengel has already won the highest German film award for Best Actress, which is called a Lola in Germany. Paul Greengrass, excuse me, I keep wanting to say Paul Haggis. Paul Greengrass is a supporter of Manchester City Football Club. The only film Tom Hanks has seen more than twice that he's been in is Cloud Atlas, a lit to lens joint. Eric.
These are obscure. I don't know that Helena Zengel has been in any other movies, so it's certainly possible that she could have won Best Actress. Did she win for this? I don't know. I don't know. Usually countries give out awards for their own movies, so I don't know.
Okay.
Could be a Hollywood newcomer and a German stalwart. That's a maybe. I feel like this Paul Greengrass is a supporter of Manchester City is meant to sort of be a reference to me, who also supports Manchester City only after they got purchased by significant oil money.
Horrible.
I support oil money. So that feels fake, but it also could be true. I don't know. Is Paul Greengrass British? Is that?
I
can't help me.
I can't really help you out here.
And then it would be very sad if the only film Tom Hanks has seen more than twice that he's been in is Cloud Atlas. Like, what a waste.
Would it be sad?
I think so. Like, wouldn't you rather watch like Forrest Gump or Castaway or News of the World?
Maybe not.
More than once.
You never know.
Cloud Atlas is also long. It's just
Yeah.
Why spend 5 hours when you could spend 4? Why spend 4 hours when you could spend 2 and just
Why
watch
don't you
yourself
answer
once?
the question?
I'm stalling. I'm gonna say that the lie is that Paul Greengrass is not a supporter of Man City. I think Paul Haggis might be a supporter of Man City. Actually,
I'll have to look that up.
I don't know if
He
that's
probably
true.
is.
So I'm gonna say that's the lie.
You are correct. He is a supporter of Crystal Palace Football Club.
Oh, so is he British?
He is British.
Oh, okay.
He's born in England. Went to Cambridge, Queen's College. He's
What does being a fan of Crystal Palace say about him?
that he's loyal to where he grew up. I think you're not really a Crystal Palace fan if your family or you are not from the area, and it's South London.
Okay.
So, I assume he's from there. I don't know, but that's what it says about it. It says you're more about the area. It's kind of like West Ham. It's like, well, maybe West Ham is a bad example now because they're more popular, but like they were like
A local
West
club.
London club.
Yeah.
Or is it East London? I can't remember, but
Well, West Ham, you'd think it'd be on the west.
yeah, you would think.
I don't know.
These English people, you never know.
Everything's backwards, right?
Yeah.
That's true.
Okay, so well done.
Well, so the Tom Hanks has only seen Cloud Atlas more than once.
Yeah, so that was a quote he said. I don't know. I mean, this might have been like.
Is that from the Cloud Atlas episode? It's the holdover.
Yeah.
Two Truths.
I've been holding on to it this long, waiting to do a Tom Hanks film. But I thought that was interesting because, well, we did Cloud Atlas, and like, why have you not seen your other films you've done?
More than once.
So many other great films. More than twice.
Would you want to watch it yourself? Like, if you were a movie star like him, would you want to watch your movies over and over again? I feel like I wouldn't.
It would depend how big my ego was. If I was a movie star, I feel like my ego would be pretty big, and I'd probably want to watch myself as many times as I could. Well, if I was a humble movie star, I wouldn't.
You just move on. I suppose there's something to like studying the game tape, maybe.
Definitely.
But
it's also weird watching yourself do things.
There's the whole like Adam Driver walked out on a NPR interview because they showed him clips of himself acting.
Is that right?
And he refuses to watch himself act.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
he's a real artist. So.
Well, so is Tom Hanks.
It's also weird to listen to your voice.
Yeah, I know. Like we're doing right now. Okay. And Helena Zengel won a Lola.
A Lola, yeah.
For this movie or for
no, for a German film. I can't remember the name of it.
It sounds great.
She's a winner. So It's pretty good, I've heard. And we're going to go to break. We'll be right back.
If you like what you're hearing, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It'll help us find more fine listeners like you.
And we are back. Thank you from that brief word from Erik. Really appreciate it. Thank you for supporting the pod, by the way.
Me? Supporting the pod? I don't do that.
You don't support the pod?
No.
This is news to me.
I gave like an upfront donation of my time, and that's really all I've gotten out of it so far.
And your time now is not worth anything.
That's right. Yeah.
And
what's the minimum wage now? Is it still?
Well, it's not 12 yet, right? It's like
it's still like I guess it's locality.
Or sorry, 15. I mean.
So our county might be higher than the national.
It might be like 11 or something.
So either way, I should be being paid minimum wage for this.
You're not, so sorry about that. And we are going to talk about the book. What a great segue that was, which we had to pay money for, by the way. About $12 from me.
Well, you bought the book. I got it from the library.
Oh, you were able to get it from the library?
Yeah, I thought
you bought it.
Yeah, I searched it out for far enough ahead that it like came off the wait list and I got it. But I think it is actually not a terrible segue, because speaking about something that you put time and money into that gives you not as much as you wanted in return.
Like your voice on this podcast. News
of the world.
It was. Well, let's start. Did you like reading it?
I thought it was pretty middling. I thought it was a bit dull. I thought it was a bit hard to follow. I didn't really. I'm not a big fan of when authors in their books like get rid of the quotation marks and just sort of fold all of the dialogue into paragraphs.
Right.
Like, I know they do that for stylistic reasons or reasons of like unreliability, right? It's not quoted, so there is a sense that it's not exactly like journalistic. It's not exactly clear that's what you're hearing. And in doing that, to me, it just made it like really, really confusing.
Me as well. I did not prefer this book. Like you, I thought the story was relatively interesting, but the way it was written was not to my liking for the exact same reason that you just mentioned. I don't understand the purpose in doing this. Like, I don't understand the purpose of writing this prose like this. And you mentioned when we were talking about it the other day how it's like a Cormac McCarthy book. Right?
Yeah, there are a few authors that don't use quotation marks.
What is the purpose of that?
Well, I think really mostly it's style. That's just you prefer to see it like that. But I do think there is an element of when you see something that's quoted, it does seem like reportage where like, okay, Captain Kidd said this.
Right.
I'm putting it in quotation marks because this is true. Mm-hmm. And by getting rid of those, you're signaling that it was, I don't know, it's not quite that, right? It's not quite.
It's up to interpretation or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Interesting. Okay, well.
I mean, I imagine each author has their own purpose for it. Like, in this book, there's so little dialogue that it can sneak up on you and it can sneak past you.
Yeah.
And it does that quite often. I also think you mentioned like the length of this. 200 pages, it's pretty short for a novel. I almost think that it's too long.
Yeah.
Like I do appreciate a story that recognizes like, okay, I am this, my size is this, and I will write to my size, right? Like, I'm a 300-page novel, I'm a 200-page novel, I'm a 75-page longer short story. This book, I was like, oh, cool. It like knows that it's short. It's going to be short. And it was almost like too long for being short.
Yeah.
Where the novel was kind of like stuck on the road. Captain Kidd has to transport this, Kaiwa captive from, say, Dallas to San Antonio. And they never really leave the road. They do a couple of times when they get accosted by people, but it's literally them on the road getting accosted by people. And they're sort of just like stuck in this linear movement.
Yeah.
There's no reason they can't leave the road. They just never do. So it's sort of like this, I'm going to keep throwing crap at my main character. I'm going to see how they react to it. And then I'm going to like, the next time this happens, I'm going to level someone up. You're going to get like progressively harder and harder bosses until the final boss. But they're always going to be on the road and they're never going to leave the road.
Yeah.
And I'm going to limit the scope of their world for reasons that are convenient to my writing.
Yeah, and I mean, reading it, it wasn't all that suspenseful. It wasn't all that interesting. There were moments that piqued my interest, but I don't know. I mean, it felt like I read a 400-page novel in 200 pages. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, some of the prose is pretty like purple. It's like flowery. It's big. Here's what like the mesquite looks like. Here's what these oaks look like.
Yeah.
Here's like the river, what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of pauses to tell you about what things look like, and not a lot of action, for a better like term, right?
Yeah.
Not a lot happens.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
and it's a lot of it is filler for something to happen.
Yeah.
And a lot of things that do happen are frustrating because they don't make sense, or payoffs don't pay off.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things in the story, like, for example, when they're being chased by three men, who are basically looking to capture, her name is escaping me now, Cicada. Johanna. And basically use her as a prostitute or whatever. And he is able to defeat them with a little girl. And the circumstances are just sort of baffling. I mean, obviously, I understand that this is like a work of fiction and stuff, but there are other examples of this where it's just like, okay, so he escapes this again.
Yeah, like logically, it's a 10-year-old and a 71-year-old man against three like
30-year-olds or 20-year-old.
Yeah, and obviously, like having a gun is a big leveler, but
they also had guns.
No, that's what I mean. Like everyone sort of has a gun, so it's not like you can just knock them out.
It's true,
but it's 3 to really 1.
Yeah,
and they all have guns. Why couldn't they just like bum rushed them?
Yeah, like all at once.
Yeah,
who knows? But I wanted to ask you, would you have preferred this book if it was written like maybe in normal prose, like normal? I don't know what you call like normal prose with quotations. Was that all American prose or something?
Oh, just like adding quotation marks to the
dialogue? Yeah, have it be less. Like, did you not like the book because of the style or because of the content or both? Like which was more appealing to you?
I think lacking story was more of a problem that I had.
Okay.
I don't really mind, the lack of quotation marks. I agree that it was a bit confusing because there's so little dialogue. Mm-hmm. You don't know when it pops up, but I think I think you can get that, but I think more of the sin is just that like not a lot happens, and the stuff that does happen, you kind of like scratch your head at. You know what this is reminding me of right now is Bird Box, and how the stories are very similar because they're both on this journey to sort of like save like younger people, like save the next generation, and they're both kind of ridiculous circumstances that they seem to get out of. I don't know. I like that. So, except for on page 5, her boat doesn't like spring a leak, and she's not just avoiding the leak the whole time, right? Whereas in this book, on page 5, his wagon's axle breaks. Yeah. And on page 211, the wagon's axle is still broken and nothing has come of it. Yeah. Well, it's just like that kind of stuff. Like, this is the whole like Chekhov's gun. If you introduce a gun, someone's going to shoot it. Right. If you break an axle on a wagon and then drive from Dallas to San Antonio on a broken axle, you expect the wagon to like fall over. Yeah, you would expect, but listen. So I don't know. It's not like a subversion of anything. It's just more of like a, it's a convenient thing. Yeah, I wanted to make it a little bit harder, but not too hard. Right, of course. Just a little broken. Yeah. We're gonna worry about it the whole time, but it's never gonna fully break. Of course not. So I don't know. You gotta be lucky as well as good. I gave this 3 stars, and I would give it lower. If there were half stars, I would give it 2.5. Yeah, I haven't rated it yet, but I'll probably give it 3. So it wasn't horrible. It's not a horrible book by any means, but it wasn't for me. It wasn't for me either. But I'm sure you had parts of the book that you were excited to see adapted. Erik, tell me about them. Yeah, so I singled out 2 things here. There is a part early in the book. I think it's before he breaks his axle. So I think he doesn't break his axle on page 5. I think it's on page 30. Yeah. Whatever. Okay. We'll let you slide with he that. Does I thought it was interesting. There's a river that runs across like the main road he needs to travel. Mm-hmm. And this is a time before bridges. It's a time before like infrastructure. Mm-hmm. So to get across the river, he's got to take his horses and his wagon like through the water and then up the bank. And I thought it was a kind of a cool scene where he just goes in and was like like the horses are like churning, the wagon's like not gonna get up out of the water, and then it does, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, and it kind of shows you what the dangers of travel are back then. I thought it was a good scene setting, so I was like, that could be cinematic, right? Like someone struggling in rapidly flowing water. So I was interested in that. And then the other thing was the setup is interesting because Captain Kidd speaks English and a little bit of German. And he takes this Kaiwa captive who speaks Kaiwa and a little bit of German, but no English.
Right.
So I think the book wants you to get to a point where you feel a relationship has grown and blossomed between these two characters, but you've removed like communication from them. So they actually can't really talk to each other. So how do you develop a relationship without speaking?
Yeah. Well, that part certainly is interesting.
So I wanted to see how they were going to do that.
Okay.
How that was going to work.
Yeah.
It helps that you have Tom Hanks, who's like, oh, okay.
Great actor.
Yeah. And also just very lovable, right?
Of course, yeah.
So that does like half the work, just casting Tom Hanks.
Well.
So what about you? Do you have any...
So definitely those things you mentioned, as well as the scene where she was trying to escape, and she was basically trying to reconnect with the Kaiwa people. And we sort of got that in the movie, not really, but that was a scene I was excited for, as well as the fight scene with Almay. Just Almay in general, his character struck me immediately when I read the book. I was like, this is a bad guy. Like, this is a bad person. You can just tell immediately. And he proves himself to be right, or proves me right in being a bad person. So I was excited to see that interaction and how that actor would portray it and stuff like that.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
Not well.
Not good. But those were the kind of the main things for me. Everything else was like, it's probably going to be cut and dry, like very similar. But it was a little bit different, and we're going to get into it.
It was a lot of bit different.
Yeah. And then why do you think this book was adapted?
Well...
Don't say Tom Hanks.
I actually was going to say Tom Hanks.
I know you were.
I was going to say that. That was my second one.
Yeah.
No, I think the first thing is don't think have fully mentioned what Captain Kidd does. I suppose we sort of did. Like, he's a person who fought for the Confederacy and then now reads the news to people that pay him money.
Correct.
He goes from town to town, collects 10 cents per person, and will read them. They're in Texas, but he'll read like the Philly Inquirer. He'll read news from London, from Germany, from wherever. Hey, Timo Werner missed a bunny in this like international friendly.
I can't believe you just threw that in there.
You might be interested in that.
What a low blow.
Kind of thing. I actually wrote that down before we talked about that before. Right. So anyway, I think this like idea of reading the news. I mean, this book came out in 2016. That's an important year.
For sure.
And in terms of like news, it's very clear that there's like a sense of someone presenting truth to a masses of people who either like can't read it, won't read it, don't care about it, refuse to believe it. There is the whole, I mean, it's the Trump era, the post-Trump era of fake news, of finding different sources of quote unquote news.
Yeah.
And I think for a movie project about something other than bringing a girl from Dallas to San Antonio, there's like certainly an idea there that would be attractive to somebody. Yeah,
I mean that's a great point because this has pretty clear undertones that are relevant to 2016 and 2020 and 2021 where we are now because of the Trump presidency and how he was elected and the state of the news in general, in America especially. But it's cool in the book how he does not read local newspapers for people because he wants to give them new and interesting and just alternative perspectives, which is clear that Paulette Jiles, that is her perspectives, and that is like what she's trying to push through with this book, I think, right? She's probably not a Trump supporter. She's probably trying to push the narrative of you need to, see other people's opinions, right? And I think Paul Greengrass probably noticed that and was like, this might be a Tommy book or timely movie to make right now.
Well, here's the thing. So I suppose he knows that like some Texas newspapers are biased, but he has no way of knowing which like Philly newspapers are biased.
That's
what
true.
If he picks a biased Philly newspaper?
Yeah, I don't know.
He knows less about them, so his odds of picking one that is biased are perhaps greater.
Interesting point. I don't have anything. I just think
neither do I. I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah, I mean, you never know.
So that was one. My second one was actually Tom Hanks. We talked about this a little bit last night. There's this, I mean, and we're talking about like men in Hollywood. So there's a whole other gender that has had a lot more problems getting on screen than men do.
For sure.
But there is a weird thing with leading men when they age into a certain range. They no longer get work, right? They're no longer like the movie star, and they're not yet the like grandparent who has a health challenge.
Right.
They're in this middle ground where they're really nothing.
Yeah, they're still kind of the action hero. They still want to kind of be that
sometimes
role.
Now with like the Liam Neesons.
Yeah.
He's taking back like his 60s with that kind of stuff.
Yeah. He's not getting. He's at least. Well, I don't know. I mean, he did Mr. Rogers recently, and that's more of like a character movie, but he has been doing like great white American hero films. Captain Phillips, Sully, this.
Tom Hanks is a great white American hero.
He is. I mean, he's obviously well loved. He's a great actor.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. I mean, but yeah, he's sort of in this weird space now.
There's like not a lot of roles for somebody that's 65 and also a movie star.
Right.
It's hard to make a movie about a 65-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, is it?
Isn't it?
I don't know. Or 65-year-old's interesting.
I don't know. We'll find out in 35 years. But I just think everybody wants to write a movie about like a 35-year-old or a 25-year-old. And those people tend to like do more things. They tend to be like less tied down with relationships or kids or whatever. And I think the stories are different because your life is different at a certain age.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I guess at that point at 65 your life is set, and maybe you're like in retirement mode or like thinking about retirement mode, and nothing is really happening. You're not the hero you once were when you were in your 20s or whatever. You weren't the action hero or whatever.
That's very deep. You're not the hero anymore.
Well, still be the hero, but
so I was just thinking like, are there less roles for him? And if he can find a role that he can play, is he going to push that through? So like Tom Hanks can play 3 roles and all 3 of those movies get made because he's Tom Hanks.
Yeah, I just feel like he is Tom Hanks. He should be able to play anything. I mean, how old is Tom Cruise? He still does action
50s,
movies.
yeah.
He's okay, so he's maybe a bit younger, but I don't know. I mean, Tom Hanks has won everything. He's done everything. I personally think that this is just him. This is what he wants to do. These are like the projects that he is picking himself. Not like, damn, I got another like, white hero, like, based on a true story, sort of.
Yeah, he's very interested in like, yes, history, historical, and true event sort of things. Mm-hmm. So what do you think the age difference is between Tom Cruise and Tom Hanks? I have it, so I know.
I'm not gonna look. I think 10 years.
It is 6 years.
Oh, okay.
Tom Hanks is 64 and Tom Cruise is 58, and yet Tom Cruise is still flying off of airplanes and stuff.
Buildings.
Yeah,
he's crazy.
So Tom Cruise drinks his milk. His bones are still strong.
So who is Tom Cruise in his own category then? Like his own separate category?
I mean, what does Tom Cruise do? He does Mission Impossible movies, and that's really it.
He does big global.
But he movies, does one kind of movie that only he can do.
But Tom Hanks does like American movies.
Yeah, well, I feel like Tom Hanks is more part of Hollywood. Like, because Tom Hanks will go to the Oscars, he'll be in movies that are nominated for Oscars. Tom Cruise like shows up every July and is like, I'm Tom Cruise and watch me, scale the Burj Khalifa.
Right.
I did this without a harness. It was pretty great.
Yeah. I mean, he's kind of a badass for doing stuff like that.
Yeah, sure. But he's not like, he's sort of his own bubble of what gets produced.
Yeah.
He doesn't make like normal movies anymore. He's made a couple in recent years and they've all done like terribly. And now I think he's just like, I'm going to go jump out of a plane. What is he? He's trying to like jump from space.
Yeah, I heard about this.
Like Elon Musk and him are trying to make like an actual space movie.
I'm sure.
So
he's trying to push the limits, baby. I'm not a Tom Cruise guy, but I feel like you're shitting on Tom Cruise here.
No, I'm just saying that Tom Cruise and Tom Hanks are very different.
They are very different.
Tom Cruise doesn't play 58. You know, he plays like 45.
That's true. He plays down, whereas
Tom Hanks plays up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stuff.
So.
What about anything else?
So that was it. Did you have anything for that?
What was my question?
Why did they adapt this?
Oh, why did we think it was adapted? Well, I don't know. I mean, obviously Tom Hanks. I think it's honestly more about the story and the undertones of news in the world, and having that kind of blueprinted into your story makes it easy for you to sort of send that message out. And I don't know, I mean, maybe Paul Greengrass really wanted to make a Western. I don't think he's done one before. And Westerns are not necessarily popular nowadays. They still make them, right? There's maybe at least one or two every single year. But other than, I mean, having Tom Hanks, who's a bankable star, like you're going to make your money with Tom Hanks, and Paul Greengrass is a relatively well-known director, like I think you're going to make your money on it, although I don't think it did, actually.
It's COVID.
Yeah, because it's COVID, unfortunately, but when they were making it, it probably wasn't COVID. So I think that's why you make it. That's not a great reason, but that's kind of what I think.
Yeah. I think it is interesting. It's very, very of its time, despite being set in like the 1870s. It's like it's this sort of like fake news story that somebody had to tell while everything was still like fresh.
And people, for whatever reason, still have thirst for Westerns, and I think it's maybe not our generation, it's maybe an older generation. But, you know, those movies still make money. So they're not going to make the Tom Cruise money, but they're going to make a decent amount.
We need to ruling whether or not Texas is actually in the West. I think Texas is its own thing. It's not in the South.
Well, it's technically in the South.
It's not in the West.
Like officially,
it's just Texas.
It's on the southern border, so it's officially the South.
When you think of like the South, you don't think of Texas.
Yeah, you think of like Ford, Alabama.
Yeah. The problem is Oklahoma, really, because Oklahoma and Texas are so similar, but is Oklahoma the South? No.
No, it's like Midwest, right?
Yeah, but Midwest is like Michigan too.
That's true.
Oklahoma and Michigan are not the same. So
they're very not.
I think my opinion is that Texas is its own thing, and Oklahoma is like half Texas.
I think a lot of people would agree with that.
So,
I think I'm gonna say they're the South though.
I'm gonna disagree.
Okay. Well, with that, we're gonna go to break.
Do you have an idea for an episode? Tell us what it is. Tweet at us, find us on Instagram, follow us for updates and general musings at Lit2Lens.
And we're back. So, before we get into the movie section, we are going to have some jokes for you guys, and they're going to be hilarious.
You know,
at least mine is.
I bet we have the exact same joke. There's one joke that is very obvious here.
Then let me go first.
You go first.
Okay, Eric. What is one skill that Thomas Jeffrey Hanks and Donald John Trump share?
They both got COVID.
Oh, wow.
That's not a skill,
but that is true.
I don't know.
Starting an insurrection.
Oh, I like that. I should have... Say it again. Let the people...
No,
let the people like clap and laugh.
I'll throw the clapping.
That's my fault. I haven't been on sitcoms very much, so
No,
I don't leave room for the joke.
Yeah, that's all right.
That was a good joke.
Thank you.
Okay.
Did you know that his middle name was Jeffrey, by the way? Thomas Jeffrey.
I did not.
TJH.
TJH.
And then...
Donald John.
And then another friend of ours has the same letter as his middle name.
Yeah. Yeah.
So...
J is a common middle name, I think.
It must be.
I don't know. Okay. What did Johanna say to Captain Jefferson Kyle Kidd the first time they met?
Nothing, because you can't speak English.
I am the captain now.
Alright, that's pretty good. That's not bad.
That's my low hanging fruit. I think the setup was not as good as it could have been.
Yeah,
but that's okay.
Next time. Yeah, I mean, that's why we have other episodes, right?
So I think we're both winners on that one.
Yeah,
those are pretty good jokes.
Yeah, pretty good. Eric, I know you liked the joke, but did you like the movie?
No, I did
Why? Why did you not like it?
The book was frustrating and the movie was doubly so. I don't understand it, but like inexplicably, nobody in this movie could act.
Yeah, it was weird.
The guy who played Almay, who you mentioned, I'm like very confident that I could have acted better than that.
Yeah.
And you've seen me act.
I have seen you
And
act.
people have seen me act, and it's not good.
Yeah.
That guy, I think, legitimately was worse than I was.
He was pretty bad. I mean,
I could barely speak out loud, and this guy, I mean,
he had one moment where he like kind of laughed. Or no, that was the other guy.
yeah,
Yeah,
that was
I
another
can't
guy.
remember his name. Sorry, but yeah, he was just horrible.
I mean,
it was just depressing. Like that would be a great role, like a scumbag role for like a B level or C level actor, and like I don't know who this guy was.
yeah, there's one other real actor in this movie, Billy Camp, the guy at the very end in San Antonio.
Yeah. He's a real actor.
The Queen's Gambit. Like I've seen him in things. Everybody else I've never seen.
Yeah.
I don't understand what this like Tom Hanks can't bring the boys to the yard to fucking act in his movie.
Maybe because he had COVID, everybody was trying to stay away.
Maybe. I'm thinking this was before COVID.
Yeah,
But like, this Helena Zengel Golden Globe nominated actress, not good.
Yeah, what? Okay, honestly, like this, we need to have this conversation because she was not good. Okay, she was fine. Okay,
She's also a child, so let's couch it with that. Like,
yeah,
we're gonna be mean to her.
Okay,
but she's a kid.
I don't want to be mean to children, but let's just be honest here. She was not incredible. She wasn't stunning with her performance. She wasn't like groundbreaking. Like when, I'm forgetting her name, but the girl who was in the Western,
Haley Steinfeld.
Yes, thank
True
you.
Grit.
I should have known her name, but she was in that role. She became a star because she was actually really good in that movie.
Yeah.
People are hyping this performance up, and I'm going to tell you, and Eric is going to tell you that it is very overhyped.
Yeah, I feel a bit like just wanting to yell like Stephen A. Smith. I remember when Kwame Brown got traded from the Lakers to the Memphis Grizzlies for Pau Gasol, and Stephen A. Smith, they asked him like, "Oh, the Lakers gave up Kwame Brown," and he's like, "Kwame Brown is a scrub. Like, why would the Lakers care they give up Kwame Brown?" That's how I feel about this movie. What happened?
Yeah.
Why is like there's nothing good about this movie? The story sucks.
Story sucks.
They purport to have like big ideas. None of them make any sense. None of their ideas are clearly presented to you.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know if the Kaiwa are good or bad. We don't know. We don't really understand Kyle Kidd's personal life, his personal demons. We don't get why he does certain things.
It's very unclear, his past. I mean, you see the scars on his back, and they mention that he was in a war, and then you mention that he has like a family, but you don't know really anything about it. It's all very vague, and the character development is just surface deep because, I mean, I don't know how you felt, but I personally did not feel any sort of empathy towards any of the characters.
No, I feel like they patted themselves on their back when they were like, "Hey, we got a movie about the news, and we got a movie where there are white people and non-white people, and there is conflict between like the races on a macro level.
Yeah.
And this is going to be a movie about things.
Yeah.
And then it turns out it's a movie about nothing.
Right.
Like none of the characters are interesting at all. None of them grow. There are like inexplicable moments of characters doing things like stealing children or wanting to sell a kid into prostitution or like bed like a kid, and that's not explored.
Yeah.
Like there are moments where the soldiers take that guy and they're like, "Okay, you come in with us. You can't go get that kid."
Right.
And then they're like, "Jefferson, you run. You and that girl, you get a running start." And then like they count to like 5 Mississippi and then let fucking Almay out and chase after them. It makes no sense.
I mean, the
logic is like so flawed.
There were moments in this movie where I think, especially towards the end, because at a certain point I just was frustrated and I sort of gave up and just sort of laughed out loud when the
sandstorm.
I don't even know if they were Kaiwa. They were Native Americans that came out of the sandstorm, and it just didn't make any sense because they're just walking in a sandstorm as if nothing happened. Like,
I forgot
you
about
weren't
this.
walking in a sandstorm just now. Like, you guys are fine. Like, this is, and then they just give
him a horse.
They give them a horse for no reason. They just, "Hey, can we have your horse?" "Yeah, cool." "All right. What are we doing?"
Yeah. Well, the
What's
thing was,
happening?
they were wandering in the desert and they were about to like, they needed water. Will.
Yeah, they needed water too.
Like the girl had collapsed. Tom Hanks could barely hold on. And they gave him a horse. How is he supposed to get on the horse? He has no power. He's dehydrated. How was he gonna get on a horse?
Listen, I need to move on to the next section before I get frustrated.
So, and there was a couple of things when we were watching it together last night. We were just like, this is so bad.
Yeah. Was it literal, loose, reimagined compared to the adaptation?
I think I want to say loose. Although I think you can make the argument for a reimagining, but ultimately it is a story about a captain bringing a former captive from the place she's found to her aunt and uncle in San Antonio.
Yeah.
Right. So the framework is there. I think within the framework, and we'll get into it, have reimagined the ending quite heavily. But I think you would look at this and you would recognize it.
Yeah.
More or less.
I think the beginning and end and like the overall structure of the movie is the same as the book. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's a reimagining, but I would say it's certainly loose with how they get from A to Z.
Yeah.
So.
And like why what happens.
Yeah.
And what that means for the captain and the former captain. The captain and the captive. Captain. Yes.
So let's get into the differences here. We have 3 main differences that we're going to dive into, and then some rapid fire differences that we're just going to
power through,
and we're not really going to delve into.
Yeah, like a horse falling over a cliff. We're going to power through them. I know that doesn't really make sense.
That doesn't really make sense, but I see where your head's at.
Okay.
I appreciate the effort.
Yeah, if I was better at this, it would have made more sense.
So, number 1, how Captain Kidd comes to possess Johanna, excuse me.
Yeah. So, in the book, there are 3 like ranger types who essentially rescue her from the Kiowa, right?
Yep.
And they come to Kaiwa. Sorry, they come to Captain Kidd at a reading and say, "Hey, we have this kid. I know you live outside of San Antonio. This is where she's going. Can you take her on your travels?"
Right.
And he's just sort of like, "Yeah, what's in it for me?" And they're like, "Well, you can have our reward, which I think is like $50 or something like that."
Yeah, something.
There's definitely like a monetary reason that he takes her on. That's the book. In the movie, those rangers are cut from 3 to 1. The ranger is, before the events of the movie, killed and hanged.
Yeah.
He's
a freed black man.
Yeah, and they're black in the book too.
Yeah.
He's hanged on a path. Captain finds him, finds the girl, takes her in, gives her to he's trying to give her to the army because like a missing child sort of situation. And the army's like, we can't take her. The guy that deals with kids is like actually 3 months away.
Yeah. So
he's like, he's on the other side of the river. He's like 3 months. He's like, he'll be here in like 3 months.
Yeah. So just wait or just take her.
Yeah. And he's like, all right, well, I'll just take her then. And so he does decide to take her, but he's also doing it without monetary gain.
Yeah.
He doesn't serve to get anything out of this.
So about this difference, I mean, I think the stark difference for me is that they hang the black man.
Yeah.
I forgot his name. But they hang him in the movie.
And he's got a little taped sign to his chest, right, that says like, this is white man's country or something like
so
that.
it's clear that the Native Americans or the Kaiwa or any other Native American tribe didn't pursue or cause this to happen. So they're introducing sort of in the movie they're introducing racial divides at the very beginning, whereas in the book it doesn't really get into the racial tensions between whites and African Americans
or anybody really, right?
Just I guess a little bit with the Native Americans and the Kaiwa, but this is like a very stark. This is white versus black, right?
But
in the movie.
Yeah, I agree with you. You're totally right. But it doesn't really do anything with that, though, right? Like
after that, I mean,
there are a few other black characters, but there's no reckoning
major.
In any way.
Yeah, there's no other like conflict or tension. So, I think they just sort of threw that in there to sort of like
it probably is period truth.
Probably,
truthful,
yeah,
right.
Yeah, but I mean, just to sort of steer away from the book in that sense. I think you're adding a bit of like. I don't want to say it's like a cop out because I know obviously these things happened in Texas, I'm sure, but it feels like okay, we're just throwing this in there, Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's texture to like it's scene setting.
Yeah, as opposed to just keeping it like straight with the book. Like what's the advantage of throwing that in there to cause more drama? Like
I think it lets us view the captain from a. So if you imagine the story as like the captain needs to get to a place where emotionally he is willing to take this girl into it's like essentially adopt her. Right. I think it puts you closer to that finish point where he's not taking her because of money. He's just taking her because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So I think for that reason
it pushes you in that direction a little bit.
Yeah.
Earlier on, I guess.
Yeah. You sort of get the sense that he is reluctant to do it, but he's not like a bad person.
Yeah, he's not gonna say no, essentially.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Captain Kidd's family situation.
Yes. So
it's a bit vague overall.
I would agree with that.
In both mediums, but
as best as I can understand it, and you can jump in if I'm wrong.
We'll see.
I believe in the book, he has a wife and children.
Right.
His wife is passed. His children are still alive, and that side of his family lives in Georgia, in Atlanta specifically, I think, because it's mentioned that it's talked about like General Sherman burning through Atlanta and like sort of burning up their house over there and how they're in dire financial straits because of what the Union Army did to their like living arrangements. He is actively trying to have his children move to San Antonio with him in the book, but they cannot afford it, and they also can't ford the Mississippi River, so they are financially and physically unable to come.
Right.
But he wants them to be with him, but he is without family, though he has family in a different state.
Yeah, they're separated, they're estranged.
Yeah, and his wife has passed on.
Right.
In the movie, his wife is dead.
Mm-hmm.
He still wears his wedding ring.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have any kids, as far as I understand it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't recall any mentioning. I mean, even looking over the plot again, there's no mention of the children. So if they do mention it, it was very brief and it was unimportant, as it was at least not nearly as important as it was in the book.
Yeah. I just wanted to bring this one up because it is maybe a bit tied to the first difference we talked about, which is Captain Kidd needing to be not quite redeemed, but like needing to be in a better light. Like in the book, you don't have to like him in the book, and it's very easy to read him in a way that's not flattering.
Right.
But in the movie, by having his wife pass on, by having him not having any children, adopting Johanna is something that makes a lot of sense, and I don't know, it's like life affirming for him. Whereas in the book, like him adopting Johanna is like, well, you have all these kids already.
Yeah, like,
and you're just like, all right, well, if you're not going to come visit me, then like fuck off.
I might get an adopted kid.
Yeah.
Well, in the book, I kind of, Captain Kidd's character was a little bit more rough around the edges than I would say Tom Hanks gives his performance to in the movie. He's certainly disagreeable, and he's certainly like rough around the edges. He's not necessarily an asshole, but he's living in the Midwest or living in the West in the 1870s. Like, he's going to be a little bit hard nosed.
I think he also has like, he's a bit sympathetic to the cause too, which is a harder thing maybe for some people to like understand.
Yeah, and I don't think that he was necessarily the same character in the movie, but it certainly gives him more of a purpose towards the end of the movie to sort of adopt Johanna and have something to live for that's beyond himself.
Yeah, I think removing family entirely is, you're right. It makes him see the value in it and having it.
Yeah.
And having somebody.
And you're not distracted by kids in Georgia. I mean, like, who cares, right?
Yeah. Right. This is the South.
Yeah.
That's the other South. This is Texas.
And then your number 3 here is, I'm going to quote it, the whole fucking third act.
Yeah, because it's totally different.
It is very different.
It's not totally different, but it's very different.
Yeah. So let's start with Erath County.
So I remember in the book at some point he goes to a town. I don't know if it's called Erath County or not.
It is. It is in the town, yeah.
And he
in the book
is told that there are these not even three brothers. There's like 5 or 6 of these brothers who are like all knuckleheads, super violent, love to kill, and really want to be in the newspaper.
Yes, yeah.
And he's like, okay, I don't want to be around these people at all. He like meets them for a second and is like, I'll be reading here at 7:00. You can find me there. He doesn't end up going and just like leaves town.
He just leaves, yeah.
And that's it.
But in the movie, he stays.
Yeah.
They sort of bring him in. They sort of force him into the county. And it's like a whole town. And it's run by this crazy looking...
Mr. Farley.
White guy. Fairly. And his like henchmen, essentially, who are just his brothers, I think, right?
Yeah. They basically like slaughter buffalo.
Yeah.
And have... slaves still, or like indentured servants or something like people in bondage work on their
it was unclear
land.
It was unclear what the dynamic was between the people who were working and the guy who was running it, but clearly he was like in power, and he was like, it was a pretty well-run shop. I mean, if you're a CEO, like that's a great place to like get started, right?
Think about the pollution from all those dead buffalo.
There was a lot of dead buffalo, but it's a very crazy town. And he wants Captain Kidd, Tom Hanks' character, to read his own news, right?
Yeah.
His own tale.
Farley's journal or whatever.
And what happens?
He refuses and decides to read his own newspaper about a coal mining town in Pennsylvania.
Yep.
And people seem to really like it in a way that was very strange. I guess, having the news read to you in 1870 was different than it is today.
Yeah.
But they were like, yeah, coal miners, this is great.
It was a really weird scene because basically they get inspired by this weird
very innocuous story.
Innocuous story. And they rise up against the guy who runs it within like 5 minutes. I mean, or not even 5 minutes. It felt like it was like 2 minutes.
Yeah, it was very strange.
So for whatever reason, Tom Hanks has this great ability to allow people to rise up to insurrection.
Well, really, it wasn't what Tom Hanks said. It was mostly like Tom Hanks had spoke, and then there was an insurrection.
Exactly.
Yeah, they weren't related. Will really?
Yeah,
think about it. Like he was just speaking on one part of the rotunda, and then at the other part of the rotunda they like broke into.
Right. It was totally unrelated.
Yeah.
But it's a very weird scene, and then they rise up, and there's chaos ensues, and in the chaos, Johanna and Captain Kidd try to escape, but the one of his henchmen and Mr. Fairley catch them, basically.
A Cali brother.
And this is going to get into the second point within this third point, or within this third difference here, where Johanna kills one of them or kills both of them?
Both of them, I think.
Both of them.
She kills Mr. Fairley and the Cali brother. That's his like main henchman.
Yeah. So this whole story, we should say, is not in the book. I mean, they go to Erath County, but they dip out before. So basically, they're in this pickle where Mr. Fairley and the other guy are basically just going to kill him and take the girl. And they do it very slowly, right? As dumb, sinister people do in movies. They're very slow with it, very methodical. They want to make sure that they feel the pain, and end up losing in the end because Johanna shoots him with was it with the dimes and quarters again?
Yeah, I think so.
So she kills 2 people. So she's a
killer.
badass.
Yeah.
She's a killer.
The whole thing is weird to me. The whole thing is weird.
It's a very weird scene. It felt very out of place.
Yeah. But there's a whole thing where Texas is occupied by like Union troops, right? Because they're still dissident from the Civil War, and so they're not allowed to carry guns in the state of Texas.
Yeah,
not allowed to have firearms.
Right.
But all these people in Erath County have firearms, and Tom Hanks has 2 firearms, and in the book he's always like running out of bullets, and he's always like has no money. Mm-hmm. And they already had this shootout with whatever the guy's name is. Almay, where they use like a bunch of dimes to put in their shotgun
because they're out of bullets.
Yeah.
But
then they can put more dimes in their shot. Like he doesn't have money, and yet they use all their money for like shotgun blasts. Yeah. And it's like logically, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
It does not make sense.
And then they make the girl a killer, which I understand you're pushed to like the edge of what your capabilities are, and
Yeah.
you might act in a certain way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But they kill them, then they leave, and there's like nobody chasing after them.
To be fair, she did try to, in the book, she tried to scalp Alme after they killed him. So she was pretty much a savage.
And we'll talk about
In
that in
the
a
book.
second.
Oh, we will.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't see this.
Unbelievable. All right, so other thing though, what comes next?
They wander. Oh, sorry, they so they leave, but their axle breaks.
Yeah, so they hitch up their wagons,
Yep.
continue on to San Antonio. At this point, they're somewhat close, and then inexplicably, I think the axle had already like slightly broken at some point. I
Yeah.
can't. It wasn't a whole big deal. It was like sort of just happened, and they're
Yeah.
like, oh shit, and oh yes, it happens on the road, and he like takes out these two tools
hammers.
and like hammers at once, and he's like, that's the best I can do.
Okay, we're good.
And then she wanders off in the desert and finds her parents' old house and sees they're like bloodstained.
Yes.
Still on the walls. That was great.
Yeah, that was great.
So later, as he's leaving Erath County, for some reason his horse gets spooked, his lead horse.
Yeah.
And it just
They're
takes
going
off.
down the hill.
But I don't think that's why it gets spooked.
No,
horses
no,
go
no.
downhill all the time.
Yeah.
So for some reason the horse gets spooked.
Yeah.
Very, very conveniently.
Yeah.
The axle breaks, the horse, the wagon, the other horse, the horse behind, the trail horse, go flying off a cliff.
Yeah.
And everyone dies except for Johanna and Captain
Of
Kidd.
course. Yeah, so the two horses die, and of course they wait till the very last second to jump out of the wagon, right? They could have jumped out at the top of the hill, but they waited almost until the very bottom.
It's very Jason Bourne-like.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
So
Not as elegant, but certainly as effective. And yeah, the two horses die, and then they're basically walking through the desert, and then they have no water. And then they wander into a sandstorm.
yeah. Tom Hanks wanders to like the face of a plateau or something, and it's like horses, and you just see like dust behind there and some like
Yeah.
rustling.
Which I thought only happened in deserts, but I mean, maybe I could be totally wrong. I've never experienced a sandstorm. Maybe they happen in like rural Texas. I'm not sure. We can get somebody in the pod to clarify that for us.
We need a meteorologist.
It was a pretty big sandstorm,
Yeah.
and they wander in the sandstorm and they lose each other.
It chokes him, Captain Kidd,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And then eventually it clears, and he sees what's her name, Johanna.
Yeah, why is that such a hard name to remember?
I don't
know.
know.
It really is.
I keep wanting to say just Cicada because that's her like.
Kaiwa name. Yeah.
But she finds either Kaiwa or another Native American tribe, and she's talking with them, and then they're like, "Yeah, okay, cool," and they give her a horse.
Yeah.
And it was just weird because they seemed fine. They were just walking through the sandstorm, and they were just like, "Yeah, this is cool."
Yeah, Tom Hanks is like choking on the like particles.
Yeah.
Maybe that's because of the COVID. I don't know. But the Kiowa can just walk through a sandstorm and they're totally fine. They can have horses walk through it who are totally fine too.
Yeah.
Like logically, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
It doesn't.
And then I might want water in that situation. Obviously, having a horse is also very valuable. But
it was just like
they're given
I
a
just
horse
laughed
and they
because
left.
how great is this? What a coincidence!
Yeah, it is a coincidence.
And it's very weird.
Yeah, a lot of the plot is just very coincidental, very convenient. We need them to lose their horse and their wagon, so let's just have the horse get spooked. Horses get spooked,
Of course, yeah, all the time.
Only in the third act, though. Not in the first act. The horses don't get spooked.
Let's get into the rapid fire differences.
Yeah.
Eric, what's the first one?
So you mentioned this a second ago, but Johanna is less wild. Obviously, she's been a captive for 4 years. In the book, she comes back and doesn't fully understand European American society, and has a lot of trouble acclimating. In the movie, she is like that too, but less so. Like the worst thing she does is like eat soup or stew with her hands.
Yeah, that was like weird, but it wasn't like as crazy as it was in the book. I mean, she tried to scalp a guy as a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
In the book, that's like, okay, that's a little weird.
Yeah.
That's actually weird. But she was more like she would scream and she didn't want to have her dress put on, and she would make funny faces, but it wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't enough for me.
Yeah, it's silly because in both, like, she's not quote unquote fixed by the end,
right?
So why not start her from a wilder place, more realistic wilder place,
right?
And because at the end she's not going to be fully like Euro anyway.
Yeah.
She probably never will be fully Euro again.
No.
So why not just like lean into, I don't know. That's a confusing one for me.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it was sort of fake wild. Like, oh, I'm gonna scream and I'm gonna.
It was like Golden. It was like Golden
tantrum.
Globe wild, not like Oscar wild.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Okay.
The role of the Kaiwa.
So, this is another one. In the book, the first night she's taken with Captain Kidd, she tries to escape while he's reading the news, and runs to a river, and she sees across the river, we assume are a group of walking Kaiwa, and she yells at them. She tries to get their attention, and they end up firing on her and Captain Kidd when he eventually comes to save her. So there's like a menace to what they can bring. Right. In the movie, that exact same scene happens, except for they don't fire on her. And then later, we just talked about the sandstorm. They come and they gift them a horse. But there's also moments where they show, her parents' old house, and you can still see their like blood on the walls.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, so, the Kaiwa are at once violent and like giving.
Yeah.
But in a way that's not fully explored, other than just like presenting it to us 3 different times and having nobody like really fully like interact with it or process it.
And it's very tertiary. I mean, we don't interact with any Native Americans or Kiowa in the entire movie, right? Like, why not bring them closer? Why not have either conflict or maybe sort of a redemption with her old tribe, right? Oh, excuse me. And I don't know. They were tertiary the whole time. I just feel like they had a very impactful part on her life.
Yeah.
Like, why not bring them back in both the stories, honestly? But in the movie, they were certainly even less relevant.
Yeah.
And contrasting, in a way.
Yeah. I maybe they were just afraid. The movie makers were afraid to like go there, quote unquote,
maybe
with certain things, just because of the way things are. Yeah.
Socially now,
right?
Like culturally.
So that could be an option, but I do think they sort of get short shafted for the importance that realistically they play in this world and in that girl's life.
Yeah, I mean, the Kiowa and the Native American roles in this movie and for the book to a certain extent are just not totally defined. They're not totally fleshed out. I mean, in the movie, they go to her bloody house, right? That's sort of a remembrance moment for her.
Yeah.
And sort of alluding to how savage that these people can be.
But they're never really in any danger from them. So it's not like that final reveal with the sandstorm. It's not like, oh, these people are actually good.
Yeah.
Because they're never actually in danger from them.
Yeah.
Right? Like they don't fire upon them. Sure, they killed their parents, 4 years ago and took her. But that is like that's so in the past.
Yeah.
In their moment, they're actually having more problems with the white folks, and maybe that probably says something too. But
socially,
yeah.
So they go into Johanna's house, and she has her moment with, she's starting to remember things, and I was waiting for the Oscar sizzle reel moment from her, but I don't feel like I got it.
I don't think we got it either. It's a Golden Globe sizzle.
You know who did sizzle on the screen? It was Mrs. Gannett.
Oh, jeez.
Do you know why?
So she's a character in the book, and her and Captain Kidd have sort of like flirty relationship.
Yeah.
I think they stay in a hotel or an inn in 2 like adjoining rooms. They're not even, maybe not adjoining, but like
there's separate, but they're
like
close
next
together.
door,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And she watches the kid for him.
Mm-hmm.
In the movie, they just get down to business. They don't sleep in separate rooms.
It's pretty funny. I mean, there's a moment where they're both alone, like the kid is away, and they both are just looking at each other. And I think the next scene is like obviously they just had sex, and she's laying in bed, and he's like, I think he's getting his news together, his newspapers together or something. But yeah, so they had sex in the movie, and they didn't have sex in the book. What is the point of that? Why do we need to have sex? Like, why is that a thing that needs to be in movies?
I don't know. They didn't even show it, right? They
didn't show it. She just literally laying in bed, and she has her
robe on or whatever.
But it's like off her shoulder, right? Like hanging over her shoulder, like. all sexualized.
Yeah, you know, I don't really know. I think it is maybe something that says he's okay with his wife being dead for 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe he's trying to like forget her, run away from her, but it's not really like that's not what the movie is doing. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I want to say that it's like him running away from interacting with his wife's memory.
Yeah.
But that's not actually what is happening.
Right.
He's just like bedded this woman and has moved on.
Yeah. Straight to business. I mean,
Yeah.
I honestly would have preferred it to have like them not have sex and there would be like some sort of romantic tension there, right? And then maybe they come back to that later and maybe they form a relationship and he moves on from his dead wife and with this new daughter of his or something like to that effect.
They do come back to her in the book, and they mentioned that she's been married to somebody. She got married to somebody who's like 62.
Yeah,
It's like a much younger man, a 62-year-old. But yeah, I don't know. It doesn't do anything for you.
Yeah,
It's just like, hey, well, you know, we had this 30 relationship in the book. Why don't we just like consummate it and everyone will be happy?
yeah. I mean, it just felt like
Sex for sex sake. Sort of thing.
it didn't really add anything. It didn't really take away anything.
Tom Hanks was like, I'm better than Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise doesn't have sex in his movies. I have sex in mine. Damn it.
He wants that third Oscar.
So,
So those are the differences.
I feel like we spend
enjoyed
the
it.
same amount of time on rapid fire as we did on the big ones. We should work on how we rapid fire.
Yeah, I'll time it. We'll figure it out later. Did you find the adaptation successful?
This is always a hard question for me to ask because I don't know if I want to answer it with like,
Well, I
was
asked
the
that
movie?
you're going to answer it. You said it's a hard answer for me to ask.
Oh. I don't know what I'm saying.
question for
I've been
me.
talking about this movie that makes no sense, and now my voice makes no sense. My words make no sense. So to your question, is this? I guess you're not asking if the movie's good because the movie's not good. Is the adaptation successful? No, because it didn't improve on the book.
Correct. I think it tried to. I think it tried to with the new scenes, right? The Erath County and, you know, the sort of, it tried to hit home the point of like, news from verifiable outlets are important, and we're not just going to tell your story because you want it told, right? It sort of hammered that point home because of the time that and the moment that we're living in. But you're right. It wasn't a successful adaptation because it didn't improve anything.
Yeah, it sort of jumbled the like racial tensions.
Yeah.
Right, like the Kaiwa get
Kaiwa, yeah.
sort of written out in a
Yeah.
way and cheapened a bit. So yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree. Hot takes.
You go first.
This is the last we're going to hear of Helena Zengel, I think. I think this is a moment for her, right? She was nominated for a Golden Globe. She's got a lot of buzz around her. But I wasn't impressed. You were not impressed. And not that we are gatekeepers of Hollywood, although some may have called us that, especially me. I just think that the truth will outlast the buzz, if that makes sense. I don't think she was particularly special in this movie. I think she did a fine job. I'm not trying to demean her performance in any way. What I'm trying to do is suppress everyone's expectations and bring it back down to reality. So I don't think I think that this is gonna be the last we'll hear of her.
But she has a Lola Award.
That's true. Maybe I should watch that movie. Maybe she did really great in that movie. She must have. She got an award for it.
Yeah. My hot take that I just thought of is that the Western is dead.
I like that.
I think, there are takes on it every couple of years, right? Someone's
Yeah.
like, oh, we should do a Western. We should do a Western.
Yeah.
Why don't we just have these wide panoramic shots of, sand with little grass clumps.
Tumbleweeds.
Yeah. And it'll be great. And we'll show the sun as it rises and the sun as it sets.
And we'll have Southern draws.
We'll have somebody with a beard drinking like coffee out of a pewter mug. And he won't hold it out of like the cup handle. He'll just hold it.
What a
like,
plug.
with
Can we
his
get
first
sponsored by pewter mugs?
pewter mugs. But like, I don't know.
I think
Westerns are complicated. The whole like quote unquote cowboys and Indians genre was very of a time. And I
Yes.
think of this time, no one is really going to go there anymore. And I think if you're not going to go there, even like this didn't go there. It could have gone there in a way that was interesting. It just chose not to.
Right.
So if we're not going to do that in a way that is interesting and really like reckon with the like past of our country and what certain groups did to other groups, it's just not going to work.
Yeah, I mean, unless you find some story that is particularly interesting that doesn't touch on the things that you just mentioned.
But then it's not going to be true.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know what you do. I mean, the Western is, what was the movie genre probably in the 50s, 60s, maybe 70s, right? That was like the movie genre of the time. And it still has kind of hung around for 30 plus years or whatever. And they're just not as popular. I remember they made that, this is just coming to mind randomly, but like, remember that movie Cowboys and Aliens with Daniel Craig?
Oh, yeah.
That was like a big blockbuster movie that like nobody really liked.
I guess, would you consider Hell or High Water a Western?
I get
it's like a modern Western
I would.
movie. So
yeah, I would consider that.
That's like financial crisis time. Obviously, there's like Yellowstone, and I guess the guy that wrote Hell or High Water has a whole network on
and they're
Paramount Plus now, basically.
Oh, does he? And they're robbing banks, so like that's a Western.
Yeah, crime
story.
Yeah.
So
maybe the Western just needs to change.
It just needs to modernize and be reimagined, I think, sort of like Hell or High Water and maybe others that we're not thinking of right now. But yeah, so maybe it's not dead.
There you go.
Or
it's
unless
just changing.
You say it's dead.
My hot take is that it's dead.
Okay, it's dead. Eric says
that's the way to do a hot take, right?
That's
you have to stick to your. You say something and you stick to it.
Okay, I'm glad you stuck to it.
Like when I say Timo Werner is bad, forever that will be my position.
Give him time, okay.
There you go.
Okay, movie or book?
Book. I know it's not close. This was I think this is one of the worst movies I've seen in a very, very long time.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I can't believe this had 88% on Rotten Tomatoes and like 73 on Metacritic or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can think of is, and here goes my tin hat, like my conspiracy theory mind, is that studios pay out to these reviewers, right? Like, hey, we need you to write a good review for this movie.
We'll get you a rapid COVID test.
Yeah, we'll get you in for the. We'll fly you out to Emily in Paris.
There you go.
To have you.
You win the Golden Globes now.
I'm just saying.
I wonder if that's how she got nominated for a Golden Globe, if they like came out to watch.
Definitely, that's what you said on the last episode.
Yeah, but that was for Emily in Paris.
What did?
This is news of the world now. I wonder if they like came out. Maybe they like Tom Hanks like signed something for them, and was like, Helena Zengel, vote Helena Zengel on January 6th.
It all feels fishy.
Yeah,
it all feels fishy. And then, what will you remember from the book, if anything?
I don't know.
That's okay.
That was a very.
You texted me that today too. You were like, I don't remember anything from.
Yeah, I mean, this is like a through line of the last couple episodes. You're just like, wait,
what did we read?
What exactly happened in this situation? What exactly happened in this situation? I don't know. The book was. I think it required more mental fortitude than I was willing to give it.
Yeah.
It like frustrated me, and I pulled back from it. And maybe that's on me, and maybe it's on the book. I don't know. You tell me. It's not my fault. That's all I'm saying. I'm not going to blame myself. That's for my therapist to say. What about you, Will?
I am going to remember that a 10-year-old girl tried to scalp somebody. I just thought that was wild. I like that. I mean, I love that. I mean, this girl is so entrenched in her Kaiwa lifestyle. She just killed this motherfucker, and now she's gonna scalp him. Just badass. I don't know. It was badass. Yeah. So that's what I'm gonna remember.
All right.
What about the book? I'm sorry, the movie.
You go first on this one.
So that apparently, I'm gonna remember the sandstorm, and that apparently Native Americans or Kaiwa or whoever that tribe was in the movie are completely unperturbed and unaffected by sandstorms. Totally unaffected. They weren't coughing. They just continued walking as if nothing had happened out of a sandstorm.
That's right.
They didn't have masks on. Okay, this isn't 2020. This is 1870. And they were totally fine.
Yeah.
Is this something that I don't know about Native Americans or Kaiwa people?
Well, the horses were fine too, so it's, it's a whole... And maybe it's just the traveling party was like unaffected by sand particles in the air flying at high
I've
speeds.
never personally been in a sandstorm, but I would imagine that it would be horrible.
Yeah, I think people die. So I mean, that's just, I've never been in a sandstorm either.
I'm just upset that that's what I'm gonna remember, because it just was so frustrating and confusing.
I think I will remember the Alme, the person who provided the acting work for J.G. Alme. How terrible he was.
Oh, okay.
What
about the laugh from the kid?
That was great too.
What was his name? I can't even remember.
I thought he was a Cali brother, but the Wikipedia says he's not. But yeah, he is like traveling with the Calis, and then decides that he likes that story that they told about the coal miners in Pennsylvania so much that he was just gonna up and change his life.
Yeah.
That was it. He was just like, oh my God, coal miners in Pennsylvania?
Let me go there.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Yeah. Blue wall and all that stuff. You know what I mean? That was very confusing. And so Will, your point is like, at some point he said goodbye to Tom Hanks and the kid, and was just like, you take my gun. I can get another one real easy. Ah!
It was honestly like that.
It was honestly like that.
It was very awkward and weird.
Yeah. That was horrible.
So
those two actors were horrible.
It's tough.
I just don't get it, you know?
I mean, why doesn't Tom Hanks work with like real actors?
I think, he worked with Meryl Streep on The Post a couple years ago. And he was probably like, wow, this is amazing. I can like say something to her and she'll like say it back in a way that is good.
And so he steered away from that. He didn't want to keep doing that.
Maybe he was tired of being outshined, and he's just moved too far in one direction from that.
He's like, I don't want people to upstage me like Meryl Streep did in The Post.
Yeah, but now he's just working with like the trash.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
from Germany. No, she's not trash, but
yeah.
But people from Germany.
That's it. That's all I have to say.
Do you have any shout outs as we sign off here?
No. Besides Tom Hanks to work with real actors again.
That would be great, right?
Yeah.
I think I was looking at his IMDb, and it actually looks pretty good. Untitled Elvis Presley project.
I do love an untitled project. That's like your untitled PTA project. It sounds so good. Oh, it's an untitled
It's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
Pinocchio. And then A Man Called Ove, I believe, was a book. So it might be a Little Joint. Never know.
Pinocchio, a remake.
Yeah, I'm not really excited about that one, but
live action Pinocchio.
And check out our most recent episode on One Night in Miami, as well as that. Keep an eye out for our next episode on The Father, which is only available to rent online, as well as an interview with Elaine Schefter Bishop, CEO of Vast Entertainment, a production company focused solely on adapting books into movies. So that was a great interview. We just got to post it.
Yeah, she is the patron saintess of the Little Lens podcast.
She is. So
she does the work that needs to be done to get books on the screen.
She does.
Which is cool. It's a really cool job. She was really engaging as a speaker. So
yeah, I mean,
that's a good interview.
Yeah, we were surprised that was even a thing.
Yeah.
That somebody at a production company focused solely on book adaptations.
So if you don't like listening to us talk about books and movies, you should listen to her talk about books and movies, as prompted by us.
Of course.
With our questions.
Yeah. So check that out. It's coming soon. And that's it. We want to thank you all for listening, and have a good night.
Yeah. Goodbye.